Matthew chapter 24. In Matthew chapter 6. Matthew chapter 6, verse 24. In Matthew chapter 6, verse 24, no man can serve two masters. For either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will hold to the one and despise the other. Ye cannot serve God and mammon. In a broad sense, mammon is whatsoever seeks to compete with God in our lives. Riches, the world, or whoever wants to displace God in our lives. Whoever wants to displace God in our lives. Whoever, that's a person, that's a human being that wants to displace God in our lives. What does that mean? You know, it's good to love one another. The Bible tells us everywhere, love one another, love one another. But you know, the love of God has to be above, beyond the love to any man, any woman. Husbands, love your wives. Of course, husbands must love their wives, and the wife must love the husband. But the love of God must go way beyond the love of wife, the love of husband in our hearts. And that's the love that he demands if you're going to serve the Lord acceptably. But you know, there are times that people will carry the love of a fellow brother too far beyond its limitation. And they'll carry the love of the husband and the love of the wife far beyond its limitation. And they carry the love of a son, the love of a daughter, more than they carry far beyond its limitation. But you need to understand, if you're going to serve God acceptably, you love God more than your wife. Much, much, much more than your wife. If your wife said, my dear honey, you know this church we're going, I'm getting kind of dissatisfied. I think I need this and this and this. And I've been trying to find a way to tell you, I don't want us to go to that church anymore. What's your problem? I just don't like the way things are now in that place anymore. And then she sits at home on Sunday, doesn't want to come to church. And then you say, this is my wife. And you love her. We taught you to love your wife. The Bible taught you to love your wife, but to love God more than your wife. And there are some people that will say, well, if my wife wants to change church, I don't have an alternative. I don't agree with her, but I don't want to see her unhappy. I don't ever want to see tears in her eyes. Oh, she better weeps. And if she decides not to come, you say, on this point, we disagree. I gave my life to the Lord there. And the teaching of the word of God, I cannot get it any other place but that place. I'm going to stay there. And if she decides she's not coming, that's her decision. You love God above your wife. That's serving God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind. And if it's your husband, he's got a new job. He's got a new car. He's got all these things of the world that will vanish away. And now that has gotten into his head, has gotten into his heart, has taken his affection away from the Lord. And he's saying that, you know, my mates, my colleagues, my equals are no more there. I don't think I can go and sit with those people anymore. And then I don't want to go to that church anymore. You are the wife. And she's telling you, you know, my wife, where I'm working now, for you to match me. This is what you do. You say, but that is against the word of God. Look at our conviction all these years. Oh, you say, no, don't worry about that. You love me, don't you? Yes, I love you, but I love God more than I love you. That is serving God with all your heart, all your soul, all your might. And it is when you understand that, and sometimes it's your children. We love our children. We ought to love our children. What if any of your children will say, Daddy, we don't like to break your heart. Mommy, we don't like to break your heart, but we don't want to continue in that church. Again, which church? That's why I gave birth to you. And that's what I've been teaching you since you were born. You don't want it anymore. If you don't want the church, you don't want me. If you don't want the God of the Bible and the God that I serve, you don't want me. I know you mothers, you love your children so much that, it's almost you say, let me die. If my child is going to leave me, don't die. Just tell that child, I'll show you the way of the Lord. If you don't follow it, you are going to suffer. And if they go, let them go. But stay. It's not good for mommy and children to go to hell. If we cannot get everybody to heaven, at least let mommy get to heaven. Let daddy get to heaven. You love the Lord more than your children, more than your parents, more than everybody. You make up your mind. This is what it means to serve the Lord. That's what Jesus taught, by the way. Matthew chapter 10. I'm reading from verse 37. Matthew chapter 10, verse 37. He that loveth father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. And he that loveth son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. If your child just, decides he doesn't want to serve the Lord, you will still serve the Lord. I know some of those children are thinking they don't understand the Bible. And they are thinking, if I don't go to church anymore, then they will stop my father, they will stop my mother from preaching. You are mistaken. We're not going to stop your daddy and your mommy once you're of age. If you're still a toddler, if you're still an infant, if you're still a little child, and your parents are not able to control you, say, why are you not able to control this little child? But when you become of age, and you get to the point your father, your daddy, your mommy cannot beat you anymore, and you're almost taller than mommy, almost taller than daddy, and there's nothing they can do anymore, you bolt out, you will carry your own responsibility. Now, daddy will keep on serving the Lord if he wants to serve the Lord. The father must love God more than the children. The mother must love God more than the children. That's what Jesus said. And then he says in Luke chapter 14. Luke chapter 14. I'm reading from verse 26. If any man come unto me and hate not father, that means to love them much, much less than God, and hate not father and mother and wife. Your wives, I hope you understand the scriptures. Don't ever think, my husband now is a leader, and if I decide I'm going to get worldly and I'm going to forsake the Lord, once they see that me, the wife, I'm not pulling my weight anymore, they will stop my husband. You are mistaken. Not today. If that is your method, that is your goal, I'm going to, make my husband not to be a preacher, make my husband not to be an overseer. And I know if I go to do this, then my husband will not be a minister again. If that is your motive, we'll detect it, we'll find out. And we're not going to stop your husband. If you want to go to hell, you go alone. We're not going to tell your husband to follow you to hell. We're going to hold on to your husband. And we're going to encourage him to stand in spite of what may happen in the family. We must look at the old scriptures together. And so don't you think you can pull another person away from the ministry, from the service of the Lord?